We are here because you recently discovered that you have aphantasia. Am I saying that right?
So I think it's aphantasia.
Aphantasia, right. And I was fascinated because I want to know how that affects you as a business person, well, not just a business person, a CEO, because I think, well, I mean, you're the minority, so, but being that, like, if you think about a CEO as someone who's like a visionary, how does that work for someone who doesn't have a mind's eye? So I guess I'll ask you the first question. Let's start with how you found out you have aphantasia.
So I guess throughout the my life, I've had various different, like, I don't know, counseling or hypnotherapy, and one of the things that kind of happens during that is they kind of say, you know, close your eyes and imagine you're walking down here, or you're on a beach, or, you know, so I have Headspace as well, which I find very useful. And then I was in a session with a person called Sarah, and she said, so describe what you see. And I was like, well, what do you mean by see? And she was like, well, you know, what color do you see? And I said, well, I don't see a color. It's just, I don't see anything like a color. And she was like, okay, so what do you mean? Like no color at all? I was like, well, when you were talking, everything kind of seemed to go gray. She went and looked that up. And then she sort of went away and was like, so it doesn't seem like you're actually visualizing stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, fine. And then at the session a couple of weeks later, she came back and said, it's very interesting. I have another client like you. And it turns out that it's called aphantasia.
Wow.
And I kind of thought, oh, okay. And I just kind of like lodged up there. And then I was away for a few days. I was like, oh, okay, I'll have a little look. And I looked at it and I watched a few videos. I was like, oh my gosh, wow. Because I didn't realize that people actually visualized like things in their head.
Yeah.
And so I guess the weird thing is that because I've always had it, you don't really recognize that you don't have something.
Yeah.
But actually, since then, lots of things have kind of started to make a bit more sense. So I remember when I did some hypnotherapy, and it was, you know, visualize yourself here. And so I kind of have this like feeling of, I know something is there, but I can't visualize it. So like you kind of mentioned at the beginning around, you know, like trying to be a visionary person in the role I do. I mean, so I have a vision board of where I want to get to in the next few years, and I've drawn it out.
Right.
Because I can't, and now I understand why that's more powerful for me, is I can't hold that in my head.
Wow.
And so, yes, there's quite a few things that I've kind of now worked out that actually why I do them the way I do, or why I potentially would struggle. And so for me, I find, so I play a bit of computer games. I find it quite difficult to memorize the maps on computer games because I don't hold a visual representation of it. So I can't really, I have to sort of really rote learn it that knows I get here and this is, so the really tricky bit that I have is like, so if you said to me now, I want to drive from, so I'm in Bristol now, I want to drive up to Glasgow, and I might have done that route before, I can't visualize driving that. What I have to do is to go, all right, so where's somewhere in between that I know how to get to now? Okay, so I know how to get to the M5. I can go up the M5 and I know that and so I have to do it by knowing particular waypoints rather than visualizing myself doing that journey.
So if that was a shorter journey then, so if you think about driving maybe from work to your house, can you visualize that journey?
No.
It's much shorter. Really?
Well, no, it's just, I just know various points. So I know, so I've learned by rote the points where I turn left or right or go straight over or whatever.
Right.
Driving an interesting one because we don't have to think actively about every time you change gear or every time you use indicator. You just learn to do it intrinsically, sort of like a muscle memory. And so, and I mean, another weird one is, so I can't visualize the face of anybody.
Yeah, this was one of my questions.
So people then say to me, so you can't, like, if you close your eyes now, you can't visualize my face? And the answer is no.
Wow.
And like, well, how do you know it's me? And it's like, well, I still have a memory. I still can look at your face and go, that is you. So it's not that I don't have a memory. It's just that I don't have a visual recall of anything that I've experienced.
That is like, that's mental. So like, you can't, because I remember you saying early on that it made sense for you in terms of like being in relationships. Sometimes people with this condition come into struggles when it's like being out of sight and out of mind. So
Yeah.
like, has that come up at all for you, like in your personal life?
I wouldn't say in a massively, like, not in a massively negative way. I would say that I find it very easy to drop in and out of social environments, and I don't have anything that lingers beyond that. So like, for instance, just as an example, like, so there was a thing recently at the European Championship where a player had a heart attack on the pitch, and you saw the visuals of them sort of collapsing, and then the cameras lingered too long. I recognized that when it was happening, it was like, they really shouldn't be showing this. And so that in no way haunts me at all, because I don't remember the visual of what I saw. So all of us that were watching at the time were like, oh my gosh, this is like horrible and whatever. But I don't have any recollection of that. And so on the positive side of that kind of, so I don't sit there working on something and then a vision of somebody I know pops in my head, or someone I'm not with, or whatever. I don't get the distraction of other people or other things that are going on. I mean, don't get me wrong, I find enough other ways to distract myself, but I don't have that particular distraction of kind of reminiscing about something that happened and seeing it. And I'm assuming that people have that. I don't know. I have talked to a fair few people about this sort of since I discovered it. But I think there is a sort of I suspect that I don't miss other people as much as others do.
Right, okay.
Because I don't have that visual kind of like, oh, I haven't seen them. Like, I haven't seen them for ages.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, it doesn't mean that I don't love people and miss them. But it does mean that maybe it's not as acute, because I don't, like, when I think of someone, I don't have the visual thing and then just want to be with them.
Okay. And then in regards to, so kind of homing in on the memory thing, with regards to like remembering your wedding, or like something like your, like, I don't know, something really big like child's first steps, or like something like that, so you have no visual memory of those things?
Correct.
Wow, that's insane.
So it's an interesting one. So like, you hear about people that have got a photographic memory that remember stuff well. I have the opposite of that. I just have no visual memory.
Right.
And so
how did that impact you in like exams, or do you think that had any impact on doing exams?
I don't think so. I did, like, when I applied myself, I did pretty well in exams. So it's I don't think, I mean, maybe my results would have been better if I could remember. Like, so one of the things that you don't know is the brain's very complicated, and you don't know whether my brain has sacrificed something and I've got a strength in another area, or like something else going on. So it's also complicated that it's very difficult to know what the plus sides and the minus sides of something are.
That's why it's so hard to diagnose, because like you don't know that you don't have it, and we don't know that we do have it, or we do, but we're not aware of the fact that each other's differences.
Yeah, so I think, so I guess the way that I learn the best is repetition. And so one of the things that's weird is, because there's a standard thing that people do when they're kind of help figure out how you learn about something, and they try to work out with your visual, with your auditory, with your kinesthetic. And so this is something that was very strange, is when I do the tests, I come out as, so I always thought I was visual because I really like to see things, to kind of start to work out how things fitted together. Whereas actually I think I'm probably more kinesthetic, and I need to learn by repetition if I really want to learn it. But if you're explaining a concept, I do need, like, I really benefit from drawing it out.
Right.
Because I can't visualize how things link together properly in my head. I have to draw it out. And so I've just kind of been trying to work out some new ways of, like, once you understand more about yourself, you can kind of go, okay, so what could I do differently that might help me? So one of the things I started doing a lot more of is doing mind maps. So like drawing out like the interrelationships of different thoughts and ideas I have, so I can see it visually on a page to see how things fit together. And also one of the other things that I've noticed as well is that sometimes I can be a little bit sort of, I thought it was a bit of procrastination, like sometimes when you've got a big project to do, you can get a bit of paralysis and you kind of go, oh, I don't know really how to start that or whatever. And I kind of thought it was like, I thought I was really struggling to put all the pieces together. And I now realize that I can never put those pieces together in my head. And so actually my new strategy, and time will tell how effective it is, it's like spend 10, 15, 20 minutes just putting down what I know about something, what I don't know about something, just so that I can start it. And I know I've got a place to go back. I can expand my thoughts. I can work on it. And in some of the videos I watched, it was fascinating that people that have aphantasia, they become artists because it's that challenge for them of like, can they create something that they can't see in their head? Can they create it on the page or on the computer or on the canvas? And it's sort of, so it's been really interesting trying to figure out what I can do differently. And then all of a sudden I suddenly get now I understand why that other people find that very simple, that I have always just kind of gone, why is this like a tricky thing for me to do?
Yeah, completely. It's interesting now that you're kind of doing experiments on yourself as well, where you're like, okay, so if this isn't working, but I now know that this is what's going on in my head, I can try this and then see how that works.
I guess that's my science. I did a chemistry degree at university.
Right.
So my science background is I like my wife and I joke occasionally that bringing up the children is a little bit of a science experiment, but there we go.
A couple of variables and some things that stay the same.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay then, so thinking about business wise, is there anything now that you've kind of acknowledged it within yourself? I mean, it's very fresh, obviously. But is there anything that you've noticed in other CEOs or business owners or even entrepreneurs you maybe do differently, and whether there's any advantages in that or disadvantages?
So it's interesting. One of the team said to me the other day, they said that when we're talking about something, they're trying to figure out like how I was thinking about something, so that if I say, I think we need to do this, they would then try and ask me questions to figure out exactly what I mean. So let's just say we're coming up with a new brand or something. And they would say, okay, so explain to me what you see. So actually, the example was we came up with this concept of business blueprints, which was the way of, a business has a blueprint, depending on the size and the type of product it is. We could say, well, you need this kind of tech, you need this kind of marketing, you need this sort of, we could come up with like a way of blueprinting the important functions and for a business. And so the person kept saying to me, how do you, explain to me how you see this working? And so it dawned on them the other day that actually I had no visual representation of it.
Right.
And actually, I didn't really care what it looked like. I just wanted to manifest the whole idea that we could explain to another business owner, this is the kind of business we think you have with these adjustments. This is a model that could work really nicely for you to think about your business and grow it. And so I definitely find it hard to explain some things that I kind of think about. I mean, I understand the components, and I understand that these things should work together, but then explaining it's kind of different. So it is quite difficult for me to paint a picture. I mean, I definitely know that I rely on sort of talking about, okay, so at this point we will be able to do this, and this will have happened, and whatever. It's sort of, I mean, I think it's still inspiring, but it's very factual. So for instance, like in certain books, it'll be like, the person has blonde hair and green eyes, and they, they're a gardener and they live in here, and they, drive a red car and whatever. And all I hear is gardener.
This is what I was going to ask you. I was going to say, have you read Harry Potter?
I haven't, no.
Oh, I was going to say, if like in any kind of fictional book, when I read, I picture what I think the characters look like, and it's almost like I create my own little graphic in my head of what I think is going on. And then it's always a bit weird when I watch the film and it's completely different. But then that was the first thing that I thought of when you told me, was how on earth does he read fictional books?
So I have no, like, if I do read a fictional book, which I mostly read non-fiction, business books, just in case Gary's watching. So I don't have any issue with having this view of what someone is like, and then it being shattered by the movie.
Right.
And I don't know whether this is related, but I have noticed that when I'm watching a movie, unless it's utterly terrible and none of it makes sense and it hangs together, I am completely absorbed in the world of what's going on in the movie.
Wow, that's so
I have
cool.
nothing to distract me.
Oh my goodness! Wow.
So I buy in very much. I buy in very much to movies, and even if they're a bit silly, you kind of go, well, that's fine. But I don't know. That might be unrelated. That might just be that I'm able to sort of suspend my sense of impossibility while watching movies.
So here's an interesting one then. Do you dream?
So the answer is very, very, very rarely.
Okay.
So from my research, it's the visualization circuit in the brain, the dreaming circuit are different.
Yes, So I watched a interview yesterday about a woman that had aphantasia, but also dreamed extremely vividly every night.
Okay.
So I wondered what the case was for you.
For me, I don't think I remember dreaming within the last 3-6 months.
Wow. Very rarely then.
Very, very rarely, yeah.
And when you do you have is it pictures, or can you I suppose you can't even recall it. This is I'm trying to work out how your brain works, but it feels like I'm trying to unpack Japanese,
yeah.
Because I'm thinking this is what I do, but then I'm like, he doesn't have that. So where is it, coding in your brain?
It's more around it, remembering sequences of events. So I would remember that something happened, but I don't recognize that. There is no visual component to it.
Wow, that's insane.
And that's the thing, is when I think, when someone says to me to visualize something, I think, okay, so I know what a beach is. It's a place with sand and with sea, but I don't see that, and therefore I'm never immersed in it, and so I can never. I mean, I can still. So I meditate quite a bit, and I can still do that because that's around relaxation and allowing the mind to be free. And one of the things I actually noticed as well on some of the later Headspace stuff is they talk about allowing the mind to be free and almost empty. And from the way that they've done it over the time is they would only for ages have 20 seconds of that freeness. Whereas I found that actually that comes quite easily to me because I don't have all the visions that pop into my head. I have thoughts and trains of thought that I go down. It's okay, so what does that mean? And therefore, okay, that and that and whatever. And so, but actually having the empty thoughts has kind of come quite quickly, and having the whatever, but then it is just black. There is nothing there. It's just sort of, and it's quite a nice sort of relaxation place.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was something that came up in a lot of the stuff I looked at, was that it does mean that you're not as well. I mean, you probably are just maybe as distracted. I don't know about me, as distracted as me, because I'm always distracted. But you're less distracted because you're not occupied by. Because, for example, with me, I can spend 15 to 20 minutes getting lost over thinking about something I did yesterday that I'm replaying over and over in my head. But I suppose if you don't have that, you're more present. So you're able to just focus maybe a little bit easier on the task at hand.
So I still have that where you ruminate on something.
You still have that?
Yeah, you still have that. I still have that. And so, but it's more of a strategic analysis for me. okay, so this happened. Why did that happen? What was good? What was bad? How would it go differently? What's the likely outcome of a few steps down the line if this then plays out? I mean, and this could just be me in the way that I analyze the world around me, but it could also be a little bit because I see it or don't see it in a slightly different way.
Right.
So for a long time in my life, I've always sort of looked at like what are I guess the one way of describing it is like chess. It's like trying to think a few moves ahead and what's happening and whatever. And like if you think about a game like chess, that's quite different. I think that's quite difficult. So there's a great movie called Queen's Gambit on Netflix.
I loved it.
So obviously the main character in there could visualize the moves. Obviously she was on some drugs or whatever as well to help.
Maybe that's what you need.
maybe. I mean, we should try it. And so she could visualize the moves in her head.
Yeah.
And so I don't. I kind of feel like that kind of, I guess, consequence, like analysis or discovery might be quite slow for me, or it might be quick for me now because I've not got all the visual. It's impossible to know whether I can figure out these things quickly or not. But I do get distracted though. If something happens and I'm not happy with the outcome of that, I will analyze it to death about what happened and what could I have done differently that would have got an outcome I was happy with.
It just wouldn't come with visuals.
Indeed.
That's so interesting. So then how does it make you, I mean, we have touched on this via text, but how does it make you feel to now like kind of learn more about this and yourself?
So, I mean, I think people kind of generally want to understand if I feel a sense of loss, that I'm not like the same as other people that can visualize it. And the answer to that is no, because I haven't lost anything as far as my is. So I never had it. I don't have anything to lose on that regard. I think the bit that's interesting is, I guess, working like understanding how to communicate well with other people. Because if they assume that I can do something and I can't, or that something they find easy that I don't, it's sort of it's useful for them to know. And that's why I'm kind of there's nothing wrong with being very open about anything to do with the way people think or mental health or whatever, because as soon as we're more open with people, then the better people can communicate with us and we can communicate with them. We understand differences.
Yeah,
and
100%.
so I don't feel any negative. I'm very pleased now that I know, because now it's something that I can take into account when when I look at situations and when I communicate with people. I suspect that one of my children has it. I'm not going to say. I've asked them questions and the way they've answered. It's difficult because I don't know when, whether you have it from birth or, or not, in terms of what people visualize when they're very young. But then I suspect that, so I'm quite pleased in the fact that if one of my children does, is I can help them understand it and what it is to kind of, it's like, you're never going to be really good at learning maps and navigation, probably. Or if I do work out coping strategies and I can share with them or whatever.
Yeah, completely. Yeah, you're never going to be a taxi driver, love.
No, probably not, no. Well, I mean, like, maybe that's one of the things I love about technology, is technologies can help make up for these sort of these things that we have. And so as long as I've got an app, it should be all right. Like, to be fair though, if I drive somewhere and I get there and my phone runs out of charge, then I won't know the visual things to look for on the way back.
Oh, goodness me.
So it's
what would you do in that scenario?
So I think in that scenario, you kind of like, hopefully you would have a vague understanding of the direction you're traveling to get there, whether you're going like north, east, south, or west.
Right.
And then travel in a direction until you see some signposts. Or, I mean, ultimately, so I've never worried about asking people for directions.
Yeah.
Which I know a lot of people don't like asking for directions, but for me, it's just been like, well, if you don't know, then ask someone that's dumb.
Yeah.
Knows.
Most people will answer anyway, unless they don't know themselves.
Well, indeed. So, yeah.
One of the last things I wanted to ask you was, did it not confuse you or maybe spark something when people would say, because I think when people say, oh, that's not how I imagined this, or it's not how I pictured this, did that ever spark a question mark in your head?
No,
No.
no, it didn't. No, I think because when someone says that, I guess I kind of think in outcomes, and I could imagine that like people will have thought of lots of different outcomes for any situation. Like the world's pretty infinite, and so there's lots of possibility. And so I've always, I don't know whether it's on purpose or whatever, but I've never tried to be too like things are finite, like that's right or that's wrong, like 100%. Like I'm very aware that there's a really big spectrum of, you know, between black and white in terms of possibility. And so I think maybe because of that, I've always kind of thought, well, okay, that's fine in terms of like everybody would think that things aren't quite as they imagined or expected or visualized or whatever. And so the thing is, when I think about something, I know what a lamp is. I know it's got, you know, like in my mind, you've got like, I say my mind is like what I've remembered is you've got a lampshade and you've probably got like a round bottom and you've got a thing in it. I can't see one of those, but I still know what a lamp is.
Yeah.
Therefore, I can still, like, if someone says, oh, that lamp wasn't what I imagined, to me, that would be, oh, it was a different style of lamp they imagined.
Yeah.
But that doesn't, so it's close enough that I don't think you would really necessarily pick up on the verbal cues.
Yeah, and I think that's also probably why, I mean, that's so close in terms of there's not a lot there that holds weight in being able to determine that you are different. Do you know what I mean? That you have something that's going on that's different in your brain.
Yeah.
It's pretty interesting. Wow, amazing.